Hello. Uh, I'm not a YouTuber person, so I'll stumble through this, but the intent here is to provide some, some example moves, opening moves, some actual play of the game of enemy action Ardennes. So it's not an unveiling of the box and showing the pieces or trying to sell it as something you should buy. There's some other good videos out there. I happened to watch the one from the Gimpy Gamer. That was enough to sell me on this being a game I wanted. So I know it's going to be a daunting game to get into because it's very detailed. There's a lengthy rule book. To me, that's the kind of thing I like. It's historic, so it takes, the campaign version can take, whatever the range of hours is that's shown. It always takes me longer, which I like. It takes me several days sitting here. I might spend 30 minutes at a time. Some days I've sat here for like 9 hours playing. So, to jump into it, I will assume you have read the rules. The way I started out was I read the 2-player rules, and then I sat down and played the 2-player game by myself. I just played there's a scenario to play like day 1 only. I think I played that twice. And then I played the 3-day scenario. And to me, that was enough to go ahead and jump into the campaign. And I think it's suggested in the rules that on the solo German or ally campaigns, German is the one that suggested you start with. So I have only played German. And I have played it, 8, 9, 10 times. Every time I get it, the gameplay is different every single time I play it, which I think is a great aspect. So let me jump into some things. For starters, yes, there's the map. I'm not going to go into the detailed nitty-gritty of it. You've got the game, you've got the rules. The way I've set up my counters, I've got these trays, so all the all-purpose counters I have separated as such. I use these little beads for the blown bridges. I found it easier to have that little piece on the board than the blown bridge counter. On my allies and my axis pieces, then I've got, for each of the corps that get placed on the opening day, they have their own bin, and then you can see, 18, 19, etc. Those are all the pieces that come in onto the calendar on any given calendar day. And then I've done the same for the axis pieces. I know the setup mentions placing all the pieces on the calendar. I just do it for the current day, which will be the 16th, of course, and the next day, the 17th in this case, only because there may be cases where the allies bring the next day's pieces to the reserve box. So then when I start the next day, I'll pull out, on the 17th, I'll pull out the counters for the 18th, just so they're present. You could put them all on here, but then that's going to be packed full of counters. Same with the Von der Height and the OKW pieces. I just leave them in the bin until it calls for them. My cards. So the German setup cards aren't used in the German solo. There's the Allied action cards. So the rules will say to pull aside the Allied offensive. So at the top, you see where it says Allied offensive. There's 10 of those. The other cards just say Allied action. So over the course of the game, you'll start adding, on the 19th, you'll start adding 2 of the other cards per day to the deck. And those are going to start giving more offensive and combat actions to the Allies, whereas the initial deck they have is going to be more of a defensive, plugging the holes and stuff like that. And then some of those original cards will even come out on later days. So, you know, it transitions the Allies to being more offensive as needed, as they'll have more pieces on the board. And then the Allied command cards. I think there's 12 of these that have the 16th on them. You know, that being the number in the top right. So all of these have 16. I've already shuffled them. And then later days on the calendar, you'll bring in more cards. 27th, the 26th, etc. So that's what that's all about. And this little reinforcement schedule has how many, you know, these are the primary and the supplementary cards, how many you'll be adding to the deck each day. So again, it starts off with 12. I've already shuffled these for day one. Germans, similar. There's going to be what they call the primary cards that say primary on the bottom. Those will be in the draw pile every day. And then there are supplemental cards, which will be, you know, typically around 7 or 8. The calendar will tell you how many you add each day. So roughly you'll never get the same supplemental card on back-to-back calendar days. That's just the way this will work. So on average, you should see the same card about every other day, maybe every third day. And likewise, based on different days of the calendar, you'll add additional cards to these. And I won't get into the nitty-gritty details. That's kind of explained in the rules, how you draw and shuffle those around. The setup. This is the German solo setup. Well, if we look at the setting up for play. So I'm going into the Battle of the Bulge scenario, full campaign. It says takes about 10 hours to complete. It always takes me much longer, which I like. So there's the draw cards. You know, there's seven primary, 18 supplemental on the German. It's going to be those and those. And the Allies have 12 initial cards. These guys. And let's see. So the cards are placed. Placed the reinforcement card. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Remove the 10 action cards titled Offensive Action. I pointed those out so you know what that's all about. It's the title across the top of the card will say Offensive Action. Those are the 10 you're pulling out, putting to the side. Shuffle the 12. They're on my board. All the units with a 4-digit hex number get placed on the map. And that's referring to, like that 2203 goes into hex 2203. You can see the number on the chip, and you can see it on the board there. I set all the chips up exactly as they're numbered. And then let's point out the exception. Place the Allied 424106 infantry unit in the reserve box. So I've got 4241, this one, which was placed on 1307. It says to put this in the reserve box. So that will go to the reserve units. And then it also says to place the Allied 161V infantry unit in hex 0608. So by default, that was on the 16th calendar day. It says to place that into 0608. Which will be here. So those are two exceptions as noted in unit placement. Just wanted to highlight that. And again, I have all my replacement OKW, VDH. I left them in my little counter trays. Improved position markers. So there's 6 U.S. units with an underlined underline on them, such as that. You see 1708 with an underline. That's what it's referring to. So those 6 get the improved position counters on the game setup. Fuel depot markers, there's 5 of those. They get blindly shuffled and put face down on the hexes that have the little 3 fuel barrels. Okay. It says to put the blown bridge markers on 1707, 1907, 2106, 2303. So that's where I'm using these little, I don't know what they are, but I'm using these little pieces. They're easier than having a tile buried at the bottom of a stack showing the blown bridge. And then place the day marker and the 16th and the VP markers on the 0 space. You'll have a bin of 60 combat chips. So I've got a little plastic tray here. I also, from another game, I've got this little dice tower. I use that for my dice rolls. And we need the calendar 16th and the VP counters going here. All right. So my overall setup here, again, do whatever works for you. I've got my cards to my right. Straight in front of me, I've got the daily sequence of play, so I'm referring to that constantly just to refresh me as to what goes on throughout each day. And I've got the solo calendar. It's also, that's the same as what's on the board, but you know, I keep it there. And then I'm constantly using my, you know, these 2 game cards, and so I didn't wear out my original rule book because I'm constantly in there. I made copies and put it in plastic sleeves to protect it. I still refer to that quite a bit, even though I know the game quite well. All right. So I'm going to take this through to drawing the cards, and then I'm going to pause this and I'll continue on in a bit. So in the daily sequence here, take units from the calendar space for the current day, place them in the respective reserve units box. So the current day is the 16th. So it's referring to bringing your reserve pieces from the 16th down into the reserve box. So they're there. There can be maybe a card to call on these to be deployed. There's also a German piece into the German reserve units. Okay. Shuffle the available supplemental cards and draw the number of cards indicated for this calendar date. So, on the 16th, it says available supplemental cards added to the German draw pile, 9. So I'm going to draw 9 cards. The German hand size every day is 6. On the first initial hand, it's going to be 9 cards. That's the +3 initial cards. Okay. And I'll get into, I'll talk about this stuff more. I want to get this first segment kind of wrapped up. So let me go ahead and that's my primary. These are my supplementary, which I have shuffled. And it says to add 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I just kind of put them on top, bottom. I do a top, bottom, bottom, you know, top, bottom, just to kind of do an initial division of them. Slap that in the middle. I'll do a general shuffle. I wish I could simply pause my recording while I do this, but I don't have that advanced technology. All right. So my initial draw is going to be 9 cards. All right. So we've got 1, and on the map, you know, as explained, the 6th Army, 5th Army, 7th Army. So I kind of lay my cards similarly. So this is the 7th Army. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So my initial impulse of cards are going to be, I have several for the 6th Army. Typically kind of put these by corps. A lot for the 1st SS. I only have 1 card out here for the 5th Panther Army. And we've got 2 corps cards and an Army card for the 7th. So I won't go into explaining what all the information on the cards means. Again, those are in the rules. But what I am going to do is pause here because I'm going to look at the cards and decide what my opening move will be. So then I can kind of talk through that. So wrapping this one up, I'll pick up in a bit. All right, back again. We've not yet started the day 1 turn. There are special rules in effect, so be aware of those. You know, you would have read in the rules about days and turns and impulses. So that might be one of the difficult things to kind of grasp until you've played through it a few days. So obviously there's a calendar day. We're going to be starting playing the 16th, and there are going to be a number of turns. I guess, you know, on here, I guess there, it's the command phase. And there's going to be a German impulse followed by an Allied impulse. And there's going to be multiple of those per day. There's no set amount. There's going to be at least 1. More than likely, there's going to be several. Later in the game, there's going to be quite a few. So an impulse, so a German impulse means you're playing 1 or more cards, and at the end of a set of cards, you'll be comparing the total of this number in the top left corner. Okay? So if we look, I'm going to look at a later day first. So if we look at the 18th, it says Allied Command Level 4. If we look at the 19th, it says Allied Command Level 3. The 20th is 3. It eventually becomes 2. Eventually it becomes 1. Okay? So what that means, on the axis for the German side, you may activate or deploy or do something that's going to use a card and 0 or more supporting cards. And when you're done doing that activity, you're going to see how many command points you have expended. And if it's equal to or greater than that Allied command level, then the German impulse ends, and then the Allied does an impulse. And then after the Allied impulse, you go back to the German impulse. Okay? That's why later in the game, when the command level is 2 or 1, pretty much every time you play a card, that's it. It's going to flip to the Allies and then back to the Germans. On day 1, So your hand starts with 9 cards instead of 6. So other than our very first draw, there's going to be 6 cards to start the day. And it says you must play command cards with a total command value of 10 or more before triggering the first allied impulse. So that means that there's a number of these cards that will be played. And once they've added up to 10 or more in total, that will be the end of the first German impulse, and then the first Allied impulse will begin. Okay. After that initial impulse that uses up 10 or more of those, then it becomes 5 for the rest of the day. After you've expended 5 points on your cards, then that will end the German impulse and flip to the Allies. And again, it may sound confusing, but once you've done it, it will make sense pretty quick. It also says, again, just refresh yourself on the day 16, because this is, the one day only of the game. Play cards to activate formation as combat tactics. Cannot use deploy reserve commands or command events. Okay, so that just means on the cards, we'll activate, like where it says activate, we can do that. We cannot use deploy core reserves, meaning the first SS could not use the deploy core reserves, as in this piece, during the first impulse of the day. Active German units may not move unless it's via the reinforced battle. They may attack and advance after combat. Do not draw Allied cards for combat tactics. So that's all during that first impulse where we use 10 or more command points. So again, I'll speak to those as we do them. Throughout the whole day of the 16th, only one German unit may use a given bridge in a single activation. So that might take a little getting used to when you're moving on the first day, to remember that you can only run one German unit across the bridge. Anything else has to treat it like it's a unbridged river. Deploy just one Allied reserve unit when performing the deploy reserves command. So there might be a card that says deploy the 8th Corps, 9th Armored, but you would only deploy one piece, not 2. That's what that means. Allied non-mech units may move only 1 hex when moving during an activation. Does not apply to reinforced battle. Treat the Allied artillery combat as not available. The core artillery occurs as described. And those 2 9th Armored pieces are deployed both by the 18th Corps in addition to the 8th Corps, or 9th Armored Division cards. Okay. So again, just to be aware, there's some special rules on the 16th. Oh, also, there's no supply issues with the Germans on days 16, 17, and 18. Somewhere it's going to say about blowing bridges. Oh, there we go. Allied engineers do not blow bridges all day on the 16th. So when you're moving pieces, German pieces, and you approach a bridge, they will not be blown on the 16th. Okay. I'm going to pause this again and look over my cards for the first impulse of the day. All right, I'm ready for the first impulse. What I usually like to have done is something with these corps but I had a poor card draw for the first impulse, this one only. So what I'm going to do is probably I'm going to do 2 activations. My plan is going to be to activate all units in the 1st SS Panzer Corps, which are the yellow chips. And again, I cannot move any unless I'm doing a reinforced battle. So I will plan on throwing everything at this position. I'm going to use a reinforce battle, which means I can move. Oh, I need to make sure there's not a bridge here. No. So I'm going to reinforce with these 2 pieces. Their movement points down the road would be 1, 2, and then I'm moving into a woods hex, which costs 3 movement points. Okay. So I'm going to attack. I'll be attacking from all 3 hexes. I'm also going to throw at this a combat engineers, which will allow me to remove their improved position. And there could be a chip in here that gives me a bonus for using a combat engineer. So that's the extent. Since I can't move pieces around other than the reinforced battle, we are set here to make this attack. And by the way, this is costing us 3, 3, and 0. So this is 6 command points so far of the 10 or more we have to spend. All right. So if we go to the combat tactics. So I said I'm using a reinforced battle. Select 1 active or inactive stack that did not move or attack, blah, 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 that could reach the combat in a single movement. Okay. So for German defender. So that's the 2 pieces I moved from that hex. 2 movement points down the road, 3 more to the woods next to that piece. The other one I did was combat engineers as the attacker. Add 1 to the attacker's combat strength. In addition, remove an improved position marker from the defender's hex prior to resolving combat. Disregard allied combat tactics calling for placement of an IP. Well, during the first impulse of the day, there are no allied command cards drawn. I'm going to just show it random. I'm just middle card from the deck. So had we had permission to draw a card, we would be looking at combat engineers on day 16 or 17. So that would have meant that position would have been placing an improved position chip if they did not have one. My combat engineers card, in addition to removing it, says they cannot place one. So for starters, this improved position is gone. I'm just going to set them aside. For combat, again, you can read through the rules in detail, but the minimum chip draw is 2 because see the little 2 black dots. So I'm going to reach into my counter box there, chip box, and put down 2 pieces. Defender elite. Defender is not elite. Defender is not green, so that one's not going to apply. And then we've got a greater than 9 or less than 4. So we need to look at our combat odds. So that's the the left number on these. So this piece here is a 3 defending. This stack here is 2, 2, and 2. So that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 18, 23. Combat Engineer says add one more, so 24 is our attacking strength, 24 to 3, so it's 8 to 1 odds. Unfortunately, that chip needed 9 to 1 odds, so the first 2 are going to be useless. Now the maximum draw is going to be, these are full strength units, they don't have the brackets. So there's 1, 2, 3 pieces. 2 more, that's 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 pieces. At least one of them is elite, so that counts as 1. So the 8 becomes a 9. So 9 is the maximum number of chips to draw. Chips to draw. 2 have been drawn. I could draw up to 7 more. Let's go ahead and do all 7. What the heck? I would at least do 5 because 5 more means we're drawing a total of 7, and there's a large attack bonus at times for having 7 or more drawn. But let's do all 9 total. So we'll have 1, 2, dropped it, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. So the next one, if it's greater than 1.5 to 1 odds, so that chip stays in play. Greater than 7 to 1. Now the P means that side takes priority over this side. Flank attack would have also applied because we're attacking from more than just 2 side-by-side hexes. Keep in mind, I didn't realize this for several games in, but flank attack does not apply if the defender is in a town or city. Okay? So unfortunately, my first few games, I probably benefited from playing using the flank attack when I shouldn't have. Anyway, that would have been flank attack, but we actually have 8 to 1 odds, so that tile applies. Next one, broken or clear city or forest. That is in a broken hex. So that one applies. We already know that 9 to 1. Okay, greater than 5 to 1 will apply. Attacker's not green. That would mean I had white dots instead of the black or red to the left of the symbol on the left edge. Attacker is elite. That one will apply. Only attacker has combined arms, or only defender. The defender is, it's a recon that is not an armored piece. The armored symbol is that. Combined arms would be that because it's got both mechanized infantry and armored. Or, if you had that piece plus that piece, that would be the infantry aspect, the armored aspect. So, yes, I have combined arms, attacker only. Attacker artillery, defender, nope, there's no artillery in this combat, so that one's not used. So this means we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hits on the defender. we'll go through those steps. I'm going to have to take one hit as an attacker, unfortunately. So another thing I will refer to frequently after combat is this assigning hits to defending allied units. Some of these I would have referred to, this general procedure, etc. I don't need to on those. This one I still look at. So assigning hits. If the defending unit has already retreated, he's not. If the hits is greater than or equal to the steps, that means we've got, what did we say? We had 7 hits, 3, 4, 5, 7 hits, and the steps they have is 2. Those 2 little dots, that's the steps. So if the hits is greater than or equal to the steps, retreat 1 hex. And then you could go through the retreat priorities, the first of the following. Into a hex not in enemy zone of control. There is only one option here, because that's in enemy zone of control, as is this. Enemy zone of control are all the hexes around a piece. So he has to go back 1. That would be his first combat hit. So now we repeat this. If we have retreated 2 hexes, we have not. If the hits, so now the hits is 6, is greater than 2, retreat 1 hex. So he has to retreat again. Into a hex not in enemy zone of control. So there's going to be 3 hexes to choose from. 1, 2, 3. Into a hex occupied by a friendly unit in supply in an enemy zone of control. Nope. In supply in enemy. Into an unoccupied hex in enemy zone of control in friendly supply. Nope. Into an unoccupied hex in an enemy zone. Okay. Retreat in any terrain, however, retreat across unbridged river or forest hex not entered via road. So, bottom line, he can retreat here or here or here. The little blue arrow is his preferred one since we have multiple choices. So he actually would retreat to there. That would be his second hit. Somewhere in here will tell us defender hits. Defending units may either retreat 1 hex to satisfy 1 hit or 2 hexes and become dispersed to satisfy 2 hits. All other hits must be satisfied by a step loss. So that piece retreated twice. That now means he would be dispersed. So now we've taken 2 hits of the 7 from these. He cannot retreat anymore. He still has 5 hits to take, which now means he has to be turned over. That's 1 step loss. So the 2 is now a 1. He still has 4 hits he has to take. Therefore, he's removed and the piece is gone. So I also knew just from playing that if he was taking 4 hits or more, he would be eliminated. I just wanted to step through the, this little assigning hits part. So he goes to the eliminated units. There are rules on advancing up to 2 hexes. Let's cover that in a later example because we can still advance 2 hexes here. Now, advancing. after combat. Oh, we have to take a German hit. We have to take a step loss. We'll just do it to one of the 12th Volksgrenadier pieces. So that piece has been flipped over for his one hit. And then we can advance. So armored can advance 2. I definitely want to get, I can get pieces here and here. Now, once you have a piece here, as long as there's an allied piece, it has a zone of control. This allied piece has a zone of control. A piece here could not move from one zone of control to another zone of control. So I'm going to keep that in mind in case I want to use these pieces to attack this. Because once they're next to this one, I can't break them off to help here. So I'm just going to keep that in mind. So that's a green piece in an improved position. I could probably benefit on a later impulse of involving these with these on some kind of a reinforced battle or such. Let's go with this stack is going to advance there, and they can make a second move because they are mechanized or armored. So we're going to do that. These pieces we will simply advance. And I think we're going to leave it as that. So I'm going to probably focus on hitting that as opposed to tying this up here for now. All right, so that's the first, that's part of my first Axis German impulse. So these 3 cards, 6 points. Let's go ahead and just put them aside for now. The other, let's see. Let me clean up my mess. Put my used combat pieces in here. Okay. And then my other part of this impulse was going to be this set of cards. This is, I'm going to cross my fingers here. This is a place I often get bogged down. I'm going to activate the, what is that, the 50 LXVII 67th core? I'm not sure. The LXVII core. Because I'm going to use these 2 pieces. I'm going to cross my fingers that I can bump that piece off of a town. I'm going to add to that a fixed artillery combat tactic. So in total, that's going to be 4 points. The other part of the impulse, I used 6. So after this, I will have expended 10 points. And that'll be the end of the initial impulse on the 16th. So the minimum chit draw is 2. The maximum will be 1 for each piece. 1 for each piece that has more than 2 dots, so 3. And the fixed artillery, by playing a combat card, I forgot to mention this last time, playing this card also adds 1 to the max. So it's going to be a maximum draw of 4, minimum of 2. So I have to draw 2. Blindly picking 2 chips. Okay. So 1 is flank attack or 1 hex attack. Well, for 1, he's in a town. So flank attack does not apply whatsoever. This would not have been a flank attack. You have to at least be like that or more surrounded to be a flank attack. You know, if you're just in these 2, that is not a flank. Nor is it a 1 hex attack. So it's good to at least hit things from 2 positions so you don't get the 1 hex attack penalty. Actually, the penalty here is a bonus to the defender. So that chip will not apply. The next one here, only defender has armor or attacker has armor. No one up here has armor. That's unfortunate because we only have 2 more tiles, chips to draw. If I wanted to, after the minimum, I could call this off. I have to decide if I'm going to draw 3 in total or 4 in total. I'm going to go ahead and do the 4 in total, so I'm going to add 2 more. Combat Engineer, nope, that is not in play. I certainly don't have 6-to-1 odds. And here we've got, it's not going to be 5-to-1. I have 2-to-1 odds because it's 4 plus 3 is 7-to-3. So it's 2-to-1 odds. That says is it greater than or equal to 3-to-1? Nothing. So there's no results of this combat. No one takes a hit. And those 2 cards are also done for the day. So of the cards I played, put your primary in your primary discards. They will show up tomorrow on the 17th. These other ones go in the supplementary discards. We will not see those again until the 18th at the soonest, just the way the cards work. I'm down to 4 cards. If we read the command phase, activations, completing the command, blah, blah, blah. So we did okay, so let's look at this. So I play 1 card to initiate one of the following. I did the activate all units in 1 formation. That was the this yellow card, activate all units in the core. Okay, so we did the activate. Under the activations, we did not have any roadblock stuff. I'll cover that when we get there. No blown bridges, no. So there was the combat. Plus play of additional cards as tactics. So that was the playing of the reinforced battle and the combat engineers. So the additional combat tactics, combat engineers, and reinforced battle. Okay. And then after completing that command, if the command value of all cards played is less than the allied command level, play another card and implement its command. So at this point, we were 6 points of command value, and that was less than 10. Therefore, we cycle back and we did all this again. So that's where we activated, did an activation with that card. Activated the LXVII. We did a combat where we used a combat fixed artillery. So we did our activate all units in a formation. Then we did the combat, and now we're checking, now our combat, our command value is 10 in total. and that is greater than or equal to 10 on the Allied command level for the first impulse. So now we draw from our draw pile to bring our hand back up to 6 cards. And then we go to the Allied impulse. So I now have 4 cards. I'm going to add 2. There's 1. So we're going to have another 5th Panther Army card and another 5th Panther Army card. So on the next German impulse, I'll probably be looking to do something in this area now. That's what all 3 of these cards are. Would be from, that's, here down. All right, I'm going to pause this for a moment, and then I'm going to pick up with the Allied impulse. All right, Allied impulse, day 16, December 16th. We just finished the first German impulse of the day. We did the combat where we knocked them off of this hex, and we failed to do anything on this one. So now it is the Allied. So back on here, draw the top Allied command card, conduct the first applicable command listed on the card. Okay. Alrighty. So if there's a special event, there is not. A special event would have the word special. Let's see if we have one in here. Yeah. So this one says Special Allies Alert on the 16th. So if that card was drawn right in this situation, we would be looking up. Sorry about the movement. We will be looking up Allies Alert, this day only. Treat all combat chits drawn that list a date as no result. So that's what that's all about. If it says special and it has the day. It does not. The next, there is no deploy reserves command on here. Okay. There's no expedite reserves. There's no assign replacements. There's no activate units. So that leaves us with number 6, doing a command event. This will be the command events. These are combat tactics. The command event for the 16th date is engineers. So let's go to the Allied card here for engineers. Conduct one of the following in priority order. Replace a roadblock in a VP hex. We have not yet placed any roadblocks on the board, so 1 won't apply. So down to the second part. Place a roadblock marker in an unoccupied road position hex with a hold value greater than or equal to 3 within 2 hexes of a supplied German unit in Allied and German communication and not adjacent to an Allied unit. Again, I wish I could pause this, but let's see. Within not adjacent to an Allied unit. So it's looking for a position greater than, so that's the position hex greater than or equal to 3. However, it is adjacent to an Allied piece. To be in communication, so that's another part of the rules. You'll want to read the supply and communication and supply line stuff. For communication from a hex, you need to be able to trace in a roundabout way a line for the axis off that edge of the board. that hex would be in communication. You know, once you leave this hex, you cannot go through Allied zone of control. So from this hex, you go here and you're off the map. So that hex is in Axis communication. It's also in Allied because you can trace a line from here off the edge of the board on the Allied side. Nowhere else up and down the line is there a position hex that is in German communication. You know, this hex, for example, you cannot get from this hex off the right edge of the map board without going through an Allied zone of control. That's the way the game is initially set up, that there is a complete line with no gap. We made a little dent here, but we did not create a gap. So this is the only possible hex to consider because it's got a position value of 3. It does have the communication. However, it is next to a supplied Allied unit. Okay. Then it says, let's see. So we have none of those. On place a blown bridge marker. We don't blow bridges on day 16. So we're down to 4 now. Place an IP in improved position on one Allied unit stack in supply, not in a town or blah, blah, blah. First, let's see if there's some choices. You do not build improved positions in towns. That one's in a town. That one is in a town. That one is in a town. Already has them. Here we go. This one here. Oh, that's in a town. That one is not. That one is not. That one is not. So one of those 3 is going to get an IP. So back to the rules here. Place an IP on one Allied unit stack in supply, not in a town or city, and adjacent to the greatest German strength. If more than one, the westernmost. So we had that one and that one are both next to Germans. They're both next to strength 4. This is the westernmost, therefore it will get the improved position. Okay. So back to the daily sequence. So we've completed the Allied impulse. And then step 3 says repeat the impulses. So we go back to the German, then the Allied. So our next impulse, still December 16th, the next impulse now will end after the Germans or the Axis have spent 5 or more command level points. See where it says Allied command level, rest of day 5. So once we've spent 5 more of these points, then it will become back to the Allied impulse. So I will pause this again and look at my cards for my next plan of action.